Sarah's Stampin' Treat. Today I'm going to be creating 3 cards using heat embossing in different ways. I'm going to do that using this kit that comes free with the very first Sheena Douglas box kit magazine with Craft Essentials. So when you buy the magazine you get all this kit with the magazine. So you get this really pretty stencil. You get 2 stamp sets. You get this one with all of the sentiments on, and they're really useful sentiments like sending birthday wishes, I can't thank you enough, thinking of you. Then you get this die set, so you get this intricate corner, and you also get this with love. And then we've got this paper pack, so I'll quickly flick through that for you. So you've got these nice panels here, pattern papers. And you can see things like this reflects the pattern that's in the stencil. So they all go together really nicely. Now we're back to the beginning, so you get 2 of each sheet. And then you get this A4 stamp set, which you can see has really big stamps on it. So we're not going to really use the paper pack today, but we'll use all of these pieces. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of ink blending. And I'm going to use a piece of Nina Solar White cardstock that's 5 inches by 5 inches. Now I've cut that to bigger than I need, because I always think when I'm blending, if there's a section that I don't like as much, or a section where I've not gone fully to the edge, it's easier to cut it down. So I always start off with a piece that's bigger than it should be. And I want to do my ink blending through the stencil, so I'm going to position that over it and then I'm going to tape it down. And because it's quite a linear stencil, I do want to make sure that it's in a good position on the paper. So if you have it slanted, because it's got so many lines on it, then it's going to really show. And then I've got 4 ink colours, so I've got Stampin' Up! Bermuda Bay and Daffodil Delight, and then the Ultra New Crisp Dye Inks, Autumn Blaze and Pinkalicious. And I've got 4 different brushes of different types. So I'm going to start with the Bermuda Bay, and I'm going to just blend that through the stencil. So then I'm going to take the Daffodil Delight, and then the Autumn Blaze, and then I'm going to finish off at the bottom with some of this Pinkalicious. So then this Daffodil Delight, I'm just going to add a little bit more because I feel like the orange has kind of taken over that a little bit. So then I'm going to grab my VersaMark ink refill and drop a bit onto an acrylic block. You could use your pad, your normal VersaMark pad, if you don't have that, and just dab the whole pad through. But I like to do it this way. So I've got my smoothie blending tool, and I'm just going to just dab that through like that all over. And I feel like the tool seems to kind of like absorb the first couple of drops quite quickly, and then after that you don't need as much. Then I'm going to peel back my stencil. You can see we've got this really gorgeous blended look. I'm going to bring in a different piece of scrap paper. You obviously don't want to do it on that piece of scrap paper, because that piece of scrap paper is probably going to have some VersaMark ink on. And then I'm going to use this translucent pearl embossing powder, so it'll add a shine and it will add a bit of glitter as well. Then I'm going to heat that all up with my heat tool. And then I have to say that's come out even better than I hoped. I hope it shows up well on the camera. It's like textured and glittery with all the blending as well. It makes a really nice background. So then I'm going to use my stamp tool just to stamp this flower. And it's quite a big stamp, and it's also a new stamp. So I'm just going to ink that up with some VersaMark first, and that helps the black ink to stick to it a little better. And then I'm going to use my Ultra New Jet Black ink pad. You can see that stamped really nicely first time now. So I'm going to use the Sunshine Valley Garden set to colour with, and I'm going to use the Pinkalicious colour and the Pink Diamond. So the Pinkalicious is the colour that we used on here. So I'm going to colour it all over with Pink Diamond first, which is the lighter of the two colours. Then I use this Maple Yellow for the stamen, and the Mountain Pine for the leaves. So then I want to cut this out, but I don't want the diamond piece around the outside. I just want the flowers. So then I'm going to use this really long Sending Birthday Wishes stamp. I'm just going to line it up on this line on my mat, so that I know it's nice and straight when I mount it on my block. And then I'm going to use my VersaMark ink because I want to heat emboss it. I'm going to emboss it with my Ultra New Pure White embossing powder. I use the Ultra New ones a lot because they have nice fine grains, so they pick up the details nicely. And then I'm going to grab my heat tool. So then I can go cut that down. So I've cut 2 of these from white cardstock as well. So I'm just going to layer up the card. So then I want these 2 pieces to kind of go like this in the middle. And I've intentionally done this in white so that it adds a bit of interest but doesn't kind of take over the card. So then I'm just popping the flowers up on some foam pads. And I'm going to pop some foam pads behind the sentiment as well. And I'm going to take some of these Cherry Blossom enamel dots from Ultimate. And there's my first card finished. I think that cool shiny background really makes this card, makes it a lot more kind of modern looking. So then for my next card, I've got 2 5-inch circles made from Nina Solar White cardstock and one that's just slightly over 4.5 inches. And I'm going to use the same colours that I used on the last card to blend the background over there. So I've still got my same brushes, so I'm just going to use them for the same colours. I'm going to do white embossing on this, so I want it to stand out. So I'm going to put a bit of a heavier coat of ink on. And I think I'll probably do a coat and then I'll come back and do another coat afterwards. So there's our blended circle, and I think there's plenty of the orange on there already. It's quite strong orange, so I'm just going to go back in with a bit of extra yellow just so that that's kind of a similar intensity to some of the other colours. And we've got this really nice bright summery thing. I'm going to leave that for a couple of seconds just for that ink to dry. I mean, it doesn't obviously take very long, but I just want to give it a couple of seconds. And while we're leaving that, I'm going to create the card base. So like I said, I've got 2 5-inch circles, and I'm going to line one up on my 1/2 inch line there, and I'm just going to cut 1/2 inch at the top. And this is actually going to be the bottom of my card, and that's going to stop it from rocking and rolling when it's standing up. So I'm going to line that up at 4 inches on there. So I'm going to make sure that's really nicely on that line, and then I'm going to use my score tool just to score the top of that, and that's going to be where our card joins. So then I'm just going to add some glue above that line, and then I can add that to the other one. And there's my circle card blank. So let's bring this there. And I want to heat emboss this, but obviously I've added a lot of ink, so I'm going to use my embossing buddy all over that just to kind of try and make sure that the embossing powder doesn't stick to it. And then I'm going to take this circular stamp, I'm going to pop this into my stamp tool and hold it in place with a magnet, and then I'm going to sort out where I want this to go. So then I'm going to ink this up with my VersaMark ink, and then I'm going to stamp that in place. So then I'm going to pour over some pure white embossing powder. I always think embossing powder is a really good investment because even for something like this you hardly need any. Now you can see we've got this gorgeous white embossing on that blended background. So then I'm going to use this Sending Birthday Wishes sentiment to stamp in my VersaMark ink onto a piece of Bermuda Bay cardstock from Stampin' Up. And then I'm going to heat emboss that with the white embossing powder. So let's layer this up. So I always like to line this up with one of the lines on my grid mat so that I know that that is straight. Then I'm going to glue this on. So then I'm going to just cut up some of these foam pads so that I can pop them behind the sentiment. And I would say if you're buying foam pads, my personal preference would be to go for some slightly bigger ones and cut them down rather than going, you know, you can get the really tiny ones. And then I'm just going to finish it off with some coordinating gems. The green ones were just old ones from my stash, and then these ones are from the Cherry Blossom Enamel Dots from Ultimate. So then there's that card finished. So then for my next card, I've got a 5" by 10" piece of Flirty Flamingo cardstock from Stampin' Up. And I'm going to score that at 5 inches and at 2.5 inches. And then I'm going to put it so that this line is at 2.5 inches. And then I'm just going to make a little mark on either side with the score tool. So then I'm going to join up this mark here with the end of this line. So it's like a mark that's set 2.5 inches from that end with the line that's 2.5 inches from this end. And then I'm going to score that across too. Then I'm going to do the same the other way. So I'm going to line up this mark here and this line here. And then I'm going to make a mark at 2.5 inches at this end. And then I'm going to cut from this mark here to this mark here. You could do your marks with pencil if you prefer, depends what you prefer. I find that with the scored marks you can barely tell when it's all put together. Obviously you could do them with pencil and rub them out, just whatever you prefer. So then I'm just going to measure this so that you can see that's 3.5 inches square, that diamond there. So then I'm going to fold along all my score lines and burnish them with my nails. You can obviously use a bone fold if you prefer. And then I'm going to push these two folds in, and then I'm just going to fold it like that so we've got the diamond on the top. So you can see I've just pushed these two in so that these ones pop out, and then I've folded that one under. So that's my base. I'm going to pop that to one side for a second. I'm going to bring in this piece of scrap paper we were using earlier. I know it's filthy, but I don't want to keep using loads of scrap paper, be wasteful. So then I'm going to take my VersaMark ink, and this is another really nice way of heat embossing. You just take your VersaMark pad to your die cuts, and then I'm going to go back to using this translucent pearl embossing powder that we used for the first card that's got that shimmer in it, and I'm going to cover that. All of the excess can go back in the pot, and then I can heat that up. And then while that embossing powder is still a little bit tacky, I'm just going to pop over another layer, and then I can heat that up. So I'm going to do that with all 4 of these pieces. And so then we've got all these gorgeous glossy glittery die cuts, and I want to put a couple of them under here. I'm going to need to cut off the ends so that they fit properly. So I'm going to glue those onto this piece. And then I'm going to glue underneath this triangle, and I'm going to glue that down. So then we've got our diamond pop-up card base. I wanted to glue that down after I've put these under so that they fit nicely under. I didn't have to measure out where they would stop at the edge. So then with these 2, I'm going to add these to the top piece. I just think adding that bit of embossing powder really does make a difference to the die cut. They look so much shinier and they're sparkly. And obviously you could buy white glitter cardstock. This is more subtle than the glitter cardstocks. But if you buy the glitter embossing powder, you can create this look on any colour of cardstock, which I think is really nice. So you can have it to go with whatever project you want. So you can see this is starting to look quite pretty already. So then now I'm going to use the lily stamp that I used for the first card. And I'm just inking that up with my Altenew Jet Black ink. And stamp that down. And then I'm going to use the same colours as I used on the first card just to colour it. I'm going to leave some white tips this time. So then I'm going to cut this out and leave a little white border around the edge this time. And then I'm going to stamp the flower twice more. And I don't need the whole image for these, so it doesn't matter that they're going off the edge a bit. And then we're going to decoupage it up. So I'm going to colour the 2 flowers on one and then just the frontmost flower on the other. I'm actually adding a little bit more pink to these than I did the first one. So I felt like the first one maybe had a bit too much white on it, but that's fine because that's going to be in the background, so you won't really see that one. And actually I'll probably only use these 4 leaves in the centre on this one. I don't think I'm going to use those ones because they're more in the background. So now I'm just going to cut out these 2 flowers on this one. I'm going to cut out those 4 petals on that one. So then I'm going to pop some dimensionals on the back of here. And then I'm going to layer that over the part of the picture. And then I'm going to stick some more on the back of here. This is going to be my final layer. So now you can see we've got this really 3-dimensional flower to add to the front of our card. So I'm going to glue that on. Now I'm going to heat emboss that onto here. This is just one of the corners that I cut off here. And then I've just cut the top and bottom off that triangle so that then it fits across there, and then I can just pop that up on some dimensionals and pop it across. I obviously don't want to put the dimensionals on top of the layers, so I'm going to keep the dimensionals to the edges. And then I'm going to just put a bit of glue on there so that it can grab onto any of the layers that it's going across. So then you can see we've got this lovely 3D diamond pop-up card. So here are all of today's cards. Let me know in the comments below which is your favourite. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, I'd really appreciate you clicking like below. You can also press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the bell button and select all, then YouTube will also notify you when I've got a new video available. All of the products that I've used for today's cards are listed in the description below. There's also a link there to my blog where you can find a picture supply list if that helps you find what you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.